So welcome back to Waffle Wisdom. I've got such a good friend of mine on today. Dave McGinness is a guy that I go back with. Man, we go back a long ways, fairly early in our careers, not the beginning of our careers, but fairly early in our careers in education. You've pretty much done it all. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about your journey in as a professional educator.
Well, thanks, Steve. I'm really excited to be here with you and to have this conversation and to even walk a little bit down memory road here. I started teaching in 1996 at an Indianapolis public school, middle school. I really did not know that I wanted to be a teacher. It was something that I was doing because I needed a job and I needed to wait for my then fiance who was in college. And I really wanted to be a missionary. Actually, I wanted to do missions overseas, but God led me into working in inner city schools, urban education, and I just fell in love with it. Spent 4 years in the Indianapolis public schools and then found a job at North Central High School where I taught for 19 years. And that's where we met in 2000, I think it was when I started there and taught Spanish for a total of 15 years. And then ESL, English as a second language, and newcomers for 8 years. And I just really loved it. I grew into loving teaching. It became the ministry that I had hoped for. And a lot of that was because of the relationship building and the opportunity that we have to touch lives. And so I did not miss going overseas. In fact, as I started teaching ESL, God brought students from all over the world into my classroom, which was just a fantastic thing. So I really loved it. And then an opportunity came in, I'd say about 2016 to teach a few adjunct courses at Taylor University in the TESOL department here. And so I was doing that on the side and had started working on my doctorate as well. And 3 years later, there was an opening in the education department here at Taylor. I was ABD, so I was still working on my dissertation, but I was close. And I was blessed to get the job here in the education department. So now I'm entering my seventh year at Taylor, my 30th year total of teaching, which I know you have me beat by a few years, Steve.
Just a few, not a whole lot, but yeah.
And now I am working on preparing the next generation of teachers. And it's just such a fantastic journey and road. I get to work with both elementary ed and secondary ed teachers, candidate teachers. And primarily, though, I work with the secondary education students, working with them to build their skills. I see them as sophomores, as juniors, and then send them off to student teaching. So that's where I'm currently at. For the last 6 years, I was director of student teaching as well, which was a really great role. Got to help them as they were really putting everything they'd learned into practice in the classroom. And then, but this year I've taken that load off of my role, which is good, and I'm able to lean in a little bit more to my teaching.
You know, in your description of your path there, it really made me think of something that's been a particular goal for me this school year. At our school, we kind of fill out a little document at the beginning of the year, kind of what are your professional goals and faith goals. I now teach at a Catholic school, as you know, and personal goals, that kind of stuff. But something you said made me think about this. You talked about the chance now to build into upcoming teachers and kind of extend your influence that way. That's in no small part why I wrote the book. Obviously, you gave a blurb for that, and I just want to go on record as saying thank you very much for that. I so appreciated that. That meant a
I
lot.
was
Um,
pleased to be asked.
but as one of my goals, personal / professional goals for this school year, is to be even more involved in the education world beyond the classroom. So I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. You talked about obviously teaching adjunct while you were still teaching secondary and then you've moved into this full time. What would be your advice to teachers who have got a few years under their belt? Let's say maybe 10 years, at least 10 years under their belt, elementary or secondary. What would be your advice to them about branching out, not necessarily seeing that as a promotion, as if there was something lesser what they were doing in the classroom, but just branching out of their classroom into more areas of leadership within the profession? What would you say to those teachers who kind of hit at least at maybe like that 10-year level of experience?
Well, I'm going to answer that a couple different ways, Steve. And one answer would be you shouldn't have asked me that because I never wanted to do leadership roles, or I should say this, I never wanted to do administrative roles outside of the classroom.
Mm,
Uh, I always loved teaching and I did not enjoy the administrative aspect. So, unfortunately, a lot of times leadership um, in education involves um, being an administrator.
yes,
And that's a great role, and you have to be called for that. I was not called for that. Sometimes when you're a great teacher, people will tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you would be a great, principal or vice principal or this or that department chair." I did not feel called for that, but I think there's other ways to lead at your school, right?
definitely.
And whether it's doing the things that I enjoyed doing, which was sponsoring clubs, or just leading by having students in your classroom after school and really just building those relationships. But another thing that I could be a potential thought is working with universities that are preparing the next generation of teachers. So we need, from my perspective, we need teachers that will take practicum students into their classroom and will mentor them and not be so down on education.
Yes.
Like it just makes me angry almost when I have a practicum student come back to my classroom and say, Dr. McGinnis, this teacher was just talking about how terrible teaching is and that they hate teaching and they just can't wait to get out of it. And I'm like, why did they take a practicum student? So if you're a teacher that, yeah, we know it's a challenge. It's one of the greatest challenges you ever have, but you love it, then take on a practicum student and help teach them and help pour into them what it's like to be an intentional good teacher. And maybe at some point you are teaching an adjunct course at a college in an education department where you get to see, that new generation of teachers coming up, and it excites you and makes you very excited for what's coming up in education. I will
Well,
say this, Steve.
oh, no, no,
No,
please,
go
please,
ahead.
no, 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 go ahead, go ahead.
I tell my students this all the time. I don't think any teacher started out saying, my goal is to be a bad teacher. I don't think any teacher had that goal, but there are bad teachers. There are a lot of great teachers, but there are bad teachers. And I tell my students this, they became a bad teacher by small decisions and by getting into bad habits of not being intentional in their lesson planning, of not being relational and caring for their students, of not being flexible and able to change with the needs of their students as well. And sometimes we as teachers have a lot of our own challenges that affect us in the classroom, and that's unfortunate. But you, as a teacher, you've got to be able to rise above that and separate those things out so that you are making a difference for your students.
Oh, 100%, man. You said so much in that little piece right there. First of all, I love that you made the distinction about leadership that doesn't just have to be the administrative route. Several years ago, we were really reading a lot about this, and people were talking about a lot of other options for teachers in terms of leadership. Maybe there is the department chair, but there may be the
Mhm.
assistant principal. There may the coach, the academic coach, the athletic coach, all these other kinds of things. But then even to, as you said, being an adjunct, serving in that capacity. And I love the idea of mentoring, whether you've got a student teacher or the practicum experience and so forth. When you think about teaching, at least I think of it this way. Yes, there is science to it. There's some nuts and bolts. Here are good practices. Do this, don't do that. But there's so much of art to it. And in that regard, it needs to be like an apprenticeship, right? Back in the day, you apprenticed as a blacksmith. What did you do? You worked in a blacksmith shop with a master blacksmith who showed you the ropes and showed you how to do stuff. And that to me is very, very important for teaching. So I think there are lots of ways to lead. And honestly, if perhaps some people explored some of those areas, that might inject some fresh enthusiasm into their work, and it comes back into the classroom, and maybe they wouldn't be quite so jaded, as you pointed out there. So let's hit something head on. You mentioned the teacher, or the mentor teacher who maybe runs down education, and I'm sure you've run into this as a professor of education. Students whose own parents have told them, I'll help you with college, but not if you go into teaching, right? I'm not going to help you with that. I don't want you to
Yeah.
be a teacher. And very often, sadly, those parents are teachers themselves.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? How do you combat that, either you directly as a professor in a school of education? How does a school of education in general combat that kind of thing? What do we teachers in the profession do to combat that kind of counsel coming from parents, even who we obviously young people should listen to their parents, going off to college, getting advice and so forth. But some of that you're going, oh, don't say that. How do we combat that? What do we do about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if we can, turn off the noise, right? It's going to be there. But we can show them a couple of things. We can show them that education is working in many places. And yes, there are negative examples of where it's not working, but there are so many places where it is working well. There are so many good teachers, good schools, good models of schooling. And I love that there's all different types. And I tell my students, we're trying to prepare you here at Taylor um, for wherever God may lead you as a teacher, whether that's in, a rural school, public school, private school, Catholic school, homeschooling, there's all different kinds of schooling. And if you're a teacher and you get into a situation that you're not happy and you can't handle it, you're not there to make the change and you can't, it's really wearing you down, go somewhere else where you can. There are other places where you can be happy as a teacher. Now, I think some people are called to be teachers in those hard schools and
Yes.
to make a change for sure.
Yes.
But you know, we can't filter out all the negative noise, but we can say, okay, there are good things going on, and you can be a part of that. You know, do you have the vision? Do you have the calling? Do you have the vocation where you are going to make a difference? And if you do, then you know that whatever your parents are saying or whatever people are saying doesn't matter because you're going to do it. And I think that's true about so many professions. Like people who want to be artists or musicians or athletes, they're going to have negative noise. But if they know this is what they're called to do, they're going to do it anyway. So I think we just have to encourage people to listen and know what is your calling. Is this something you're called to do? And if so, then you're going to have to do it because God is pushing you to do this. And also know that it's not all negative out there, right?
Yes. Yes. It's funny, the way you were saying that, it conjured up a kind of a metaphor and image for me, which admittedly is going to date me a little bit, and certainly we're right in there together. But I remember the days of actually listening to the radio in the car. So not Spotify, not something coming in satellite or whatever, but actual radio. And you would drive out of a signal, right? And it starts to get a little fuzzy, and you're trying to hold on because there's a really good song playing. You keep listening, but it gets worse and worse and worse. And that to me is the negative noise. And what did you do when the negative noise was so much, all that static, and you really couldn't even hear the
Yep.
song anymore? You tuned into another station,
Yes, that's
turned
right.
the knob, and you
That's right.
tuned into another station. And I think that is crucial. And that's where I think people like you come in, the professors and the schools of education. I think the good veteran teachers who are out there in the elementary and the secondaries who are tuned in to those good experiences. We need to share those because you can't expect that 19, 20, 21-year-old person to know where the good station is, right?
Right.
They're just getting the static, they're hearing the stuff. So that's where we come in. We have to be positive, not in the sense of painting this ridiculous rose-colored glass sort of thing and really mixing the metaphors now, but really not painting something false, but directing them toward what is positive. And I also think you're exactly right. What might you be called to? And I think you can look at teaching just as a job, and you might be able to do an adequate job of it. But when you understand it as calling,
Hmm.
and that really makes all the difference in the world, you're going to be infinitely more effective. You're going to be way happier as well as you understand what that is. And again, maybe you're called into a really tough spot. Maybe you're called, again, all the different avenues there. So let me ask you this. How would you guide a young person who's at Taylor in your school of education who is trying to discern public, private,
Mm.
large, middle, small, urban, suburban, rural, all those kind of the key factors and structures of schools? How would you help them to go about that discernment process?
That's a tough one because it's not like you can try something for, you know, a few months and then try something else. And but we do give them I know in our program and probably in other universities as well, we make sure that we put them in a diversity of placements. So
Hmm.
they do get a placement in a rural school, in a more urban school, and so on. So we try to give them that diversity so they know a little bit more about what's out there. Um, but then, as they are seniors, and I talk to a lot of seniors about next steps, the first thing I tell them is you got to pray, right? You got to commit this to the Lord. And you also need to think about where do you want to be? Um, do you have a desire to be teaching internationally? We have a lot of students who go and teach internationally. You're young, maybe you're not, um, you don't have a ring on the finger right now. You have a little bit more freedom to do some fun experiences. Teaching internationally is a great opportunity. Usually, the discipline issues are not as pronounced as maybe in some other schools here in the United States, if they're international schools. So that's an opportunity. But I just lay out the opportunities. I say, these are the opportunities. What are you looking to do? Are you looking to be close to family? Are you looking for a certain school district that you would like to be a part of? Go for it. See what's available. If doors are shutting, then you're going to have to look elsewhere, but be open, be flexible. Um, think about where you want to go, who you want to be around. If you have a community there, you're going to need a community, right?
Right,
And
right, right.
you need that support system. Your first few years of teaching are challenging. And so if you don't have a support system, if you don't have a good church, a good group behind you, that would be a challenge. So make sure that you have that support system or that you can locate a support system as well. But again, be praying over those opportunities as doors close. Don't see that as negative. It's like you're narrowing it down.
Right.
But again, then you're comparing, maybe you have two good job offers. Yeah, and you do have to look at what they're offering as far as compensation, but you have to look at the students and more importantly, you need to go into those buildings and see what the atmosphere is among the teachers. Is
Yes,
it
yes,
toxic atmosphere, a
yes.
lot of negativity? You don't want to be at a place that's so negative your first couple of years that you're going to hate what you're doing. Admin is supportive and you have a lot of
Yeah.
positivity.
Yeah, let's go there. Let's go there. We've been talking about teachers and talking about the young candidates coming up the pike, talking about the mentor teachers and that kind of thing. What would you, as a professor in a school of education, like to say most to building level administrators? We're talking the principals, the assistant principals. If it's in the secondary level, maybe the department chairs. What would you like to say most to administrators about how they can foster that positive kind of environment where everybody flourishes?
Yeah. I would just say you are more important than you even realize in your relationship to the teachers under you, how you respect them, how you talk to them, how you encourage them and build them up instead of using negative and tearing down language, which we've experienced, right?
Yes.
And being intentional with support systems. I interact with a lot of building um, principals, a lot of superintendents, and I'm amazed at some of the great work that they're doing to support
Mm,
young teachers. They have a
mm,
lot of great mentoring programs, a lot of great professional development, a lot of great support systems in place, and they're doing a really great job. And it makes a difference.
yes.
It makes a huge difference. And when teachers aren't afraid of their principal, but they are supported and encouraged to grow, and when a principal says to me that when they're interviewing, they're not necessarily concerned about the prospective teacher knowing all the content. They want to know, does this prospective teacher love students? Are they willing to learn and grow? And that's what we want to hear from our principals because you have the right person there then.
Oh, 100%. I said similar things to teaching candidates, speaking in different places. You look at the compensation package, you mentioned that earlier. Certainly that's there. But I've said in your interview, ask about leadership opportunities, ask about growth opportunities, ask about ongoing training and mentoring opportunities.
Yeah,
And I said, if you have whoever's interviewing you, if that person starts to hem and haw on those kinds of questions, you make a mental note, thank you for the interview. And even if they offer you the job, don't accept it. Because I have to say, I'm a very strong free market, free enterprise kind of guy. And I do believe that success is going to breed success. Those are the schools that are going to do well. And if you've got somebody in place who is not fostering that, that's going to become apparent quickly. You're not going to have
yeah,
the teachers you need to have. And then that will force the change that needs to happen. So, uh,
absolutely.
that's such a huge thing. I want to ask you this. I want to take you back to the beginning here. You've been enjoying your time at Taylor. Anytime I have a chance to see you, you're always happy. You're a joyous kind of guy. What is something you miss the most? Whether it's about the middle school classroom in your early days, the high school classroom in those middle years. What do you miss the most about being the classroom teacher yourself?
Yeah. Easily two things. Seeing my students every day instead of twice a week, huge difference. I love that daily interaction with the students and having my own room that I could welcome my students into that had
Mm.
my personality and it was my home basically. I was showing them hospitality as a teacher to have them in my room. So here I might teach in multiple rooms throughout the day, just bring my books with me. There's nothing on the walls really that are
Right.
meaningful. And again, just that twice a week, it takes too long to build the relationships, but it is fantastic. The college students I work with are just amazing, and I love it. and we have different types of relationships here. You know, they come to my office hours or set up meetings with me to talk about life and to talk about future goals and plans, to talk about
Mm.
their, their fiance or this or that. Pray together, which is fantastic. So it's a great trade-off, but I do miss the daily interactions with my students, probably the most.
You know, you said something there, and as soon as you said it, I knew exactly what you were talking about, but it really flipped a switch for me. We obviously interview teachers, candidates who are going to hire to our school, and we do evaluations kind of throughout their career. But honestly, I think one of the most telling things about a teacher or professor who has been at it for a while is whether that person wants to see more or less of the student.
Yeah,
And if somebody is saying, man, I just getting tired of these kids all the time, and just, whew, then you're going, okay, maybe you're getting a little on the edge there. Maybe you need a little break, a little timeout or whatever. But if you're the kind of person who's saying, man, I just want more time with them. I need more time with them. I want to build that
yeah,
relationship with them. I need that. When I hear that, I'm going, yes, that's the kind of teacher. That's the kind of person you want, is that person who wants to spend the time with those students. So,
absolutely.
beautiful, beautiful comment there. Dave, thank you so much. Thank you for being on this. Really, really appreciate it. Hope everybody has had a good time here with this episode. And as always, folks, have a waffle day.